Today, we're going to be exploring what's been called the most desolate highway in California. Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Right now I'm in Twentynine Palms, California, near the entrance to Joshua Tree National Park. But we're not heading to the national park today. Currently, we're right on California State Route 62, and millions of people take this highway every year to get to the national park and to the Twentynine Palms Marine Base. Well, the western part of the highway anyways. East of here, very few people drive the highway, and it's been called the most desolate highway in California. Now, I'm sure there's some northern and central California highways that could also lay claim to that title, but they've named it this for a reason. But desolate doesn't mean there's nothing to see. So right now we're going to jump in the car, head east, and explore the most desolate highway in California. Today we will be traveling on the eastern 100+ miles of California State Route 62, from Twentynine Palms to the Arizona border, the section that has been called the most desolate highway in California. The western part of Highway 62 was created in 1935 and was originally Route 187. It was expanded slowly over the decades, and by 1961, the highway made it to Twentynine Palms. There had been a push since the 1930s to extend the highway east to Parker, Arizona, but that wouldn't happen for decades. East of Twentynine Palms, the road that we're taking today wasn't fully paved until 1970 and didn't become part of the highway until 1972. The dirt road was originally built to help manage the aqueduct carrying water from the Colorado River to Los Angeles. As soon as we leave town, we have this sign as a warning to everyone about to travel this highway. We've gone about 29 miles, and I think we may have only passed 6 cars going the opposite direction so far, but we've reached the Sheephole Valley Wilderness, which is part of the Mojave Trails National Monument. Like a lot of places in the desert, there is a legend of lost treasure in the Sheephole Mountains. Supposedly, a man named Elo Long and his partner found a rich gold mine in these mountains. The partner went to San Francisco, became ill and died, but Long continued working the mine until he ended up getting severely injured in an accident. He managed to make it to San Bernardino, but the injuries were too severe, and on his deathbed, he wrote a letter indicating where the mine was. Of course, these guys never give great directions, and the mine has yet to be found, if it exists. There is a lot of World War II history in this area, as multiple camps from General Patton's Desert Training Center were located along what is now Highway 62, including Camp Granite in the desert behind me and Camp Iron Mountain right across the highway. Established in 1942, Camp Granite and Camp Iron Mountain were subcamps of the U.S. Army Desert Training Center. General George S. Patton's 3rd Armored Division trained at these camps before taking part in the North Africa campaign during World War II. Aside from the markers on the side of Highway 62 for the camps, if you venture further out into the desert, you could still see what's left of the camps, as roads and walkways are clearly visible. Camp Iron Mountain is probably the best preserved of all the Desert Training Center camps, and walking around it, you could just imagine what it was like here with thousands of soldiers. While most of the structures here would have been tents, 2 of the chapels still remain. We've gone about 1.5 miles down the road from the Army camp markers, and this is the Rice Desert signpost. People have attached all sorts of signs to this pole. If there's one thing you can always find in the desert, it is some interesting works of art. If you look at Highway 62 on Google Maps, there are 2 towns listed along the highway through the desert. We are at Freda, which is one of the places listed on the map. As you could probably tell, nothing has been here in quite some time. Prior to World War II, this was a siding for the Santa Fe Railroad to allow trains to pass each other, but when the Desert Training Center was built in 1942, this became the quartermaster depot where supplies for the camps would be offloaded from the trains and stored. The Army left in 1944, but there are still a few traces, like these rocks lined up here. The Army loves for rocks to be in a line. There are still traces here and there, but no one has lived here since the Army left 80 years ago. But now, we're going to head to the other so-called town listed on Google Maps. This is the Rice Shoe Tree, which is really a shoe gas station, I guess, but it's probably the most famous site along this stretch of Highway 62. There was originally a tree up the road a bit, and it was actually an underwear tree, but it burned down about 20 years ago or so. The town of Rice was here because of the Santa Fe Railroad, but was largely abandoned after World War II. This gas station opened about 1970, but I'm not sure when it closed down. The most recent claim to fame for Rice is the train scene at the beginning of the movie Fast 5 was filmed here. If you don't see enough shoes at the gas station, 100 feet away is this shoe garden. This is actually where the original shoe/underwear tree was, and was built solely, no pun intended, for the purpose of hanging shoes. For the entire length of the railroad line along Highway 62, people have used rocks or other materials to write their names or messages along the tracks. This goes on for miles and miles. Of all the Desert Training Center camps, the one we've arrived at now is the most unique. This was the Rice Army Airfield. Only a small piece of concrete is left, but from above, you could still make out the 2 5,000-foot runways. This was a civilian airfield before the war, but the Army acquired it in 1942. There were about 3,000 troops stationed here, and the airfield was used for reconnaissance and dive bomber training. In 1949, this airfield was turned back over to civilian control, but was abandoned at some point between 1955 and 1958. I read somewhere that this place was in consideration for the first atomic bomb test, and ended up being the second choice behind New Mexico. Near the airfield, there's this marker for Camp Rice, which was also part of the Army's Desert Training Center, though there's nothing left of it. After 100 miles, we've hit civilization again. Vidal Junction has an agriculture inspection station and a small gas station and store. With this being the first or last gas station for 100 miles, depending on which way you're traveling, it's definitely a seller's market. Gas here is almost $8 a gallon right now. We are now on the final stretch of highway before reaching the Colorado River. There are a lot more cars on the road now, but prior to reaching Vidal Junction, the road was pretty empty. You could see how this road earned the nickname California's most desolate highway, but it's certainly not California's most boring highway. If you're a fan of lonely roads, wide open desert vistas, and the occasional bit of strangeness, you'll probably enjoy a drive on Highway 62. We've made it to the Colorado River, the border with Arizona, and the end of California State Route 62. So that's our look at the most desolate highway in California. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.